NFL Week 17 is officially here. Let's tier rank every team. We have the eliminated tier that I'm just going to kind of speed run through here. Tua benched is a good thing. The Jets have a ton of draft picks. Joe Burrow had a good week, but Cincinnati still has a ton of work to do for him. Shedeur Sanders, probably worth giving him a full season next year. Cam Ward starting to show some promise. You'd like to see that. His last 3 games, there was only 3 multi-touchdown games on the year. Kansas City, Gardner Minshew didn't tear his ACL, so good for him. The Vegas Raiders, Ashton Jeanty showed probably his best game on tape yet versus the Houston Texans, so it's something to believe in. The Dallas Cowboys, they got some draft capital. They got a really star-studded offense. I wouldn't be shocked if they were back in the playoffs next year. Washington, can they stay healthy? Where does Jaden Daniels fall into this quarterback mix with Drake May and Caleb Williams and Bo Nix? Could be an interesting conversation. The Giants, Jackson Dart throws for only 33 yards in a game. Pretty sad if they get the #1 overall pick. Do they need to consider going Mendoza? The Atlanta Falcons, maybe Kirk Cousins is saving Raheem Morris's job right now. Possibly. And maybe I wasn't so right on Tyler Shuck after all not being that good. He's been really, really solid the last month, and I could hand up admit when somebody's better than I expected. In the Cardinals, Kyler Murray trade sweepstakes this offseason should be interesting. All right, we speed run through those tiers, and let's move into the Frisky tier. We have the Indianapolis Colts, who are currently 8-7, technically not dead for the playoffs yet. I believe if they win out and Houston loses out, that's their pathway to getting into the playoffs. Don't see it happening either direction. Phillip Rivers coming back has been quite the interesting story, and it was a fun Monday Night Football game versus the 49ers. They just didn't have the juice to compete with San Francisco, and that was to be expected. Old man Rivers got about 45 yards on that arm before it gives out, but talk about a dog, man. A Frisky team that's been fun to watch towards the end of the year. We'll see what they look like next year. After trading away their picks, they're definitely going to be all in this offseason. Will it be Daniel Jones who they're bringing back at quarterback on kind of a discount with his injury? Probably, and I do think that if they could bring back Danny Dimes and get the version of him that they got all year this year, plus that defense with Buckner and Charvarius Ward, and Sauce Gardner stays healthy next year with Anarumo, they could be in the playoffs for sure. And then the Baltimore Ravens, man, they have a lot of change coming this offseason. And let's call a spade here. This has been a massive disappointment for the Baltimore Ravens, maybe more so than any team in the NFL. They're going to miss the playoffs. They're technically still alive. They could win out. Pittsburgh could lose out theoretically, but Pittsburgh has a game versus the Browns. So again, unlikely, but still alive. So still Frisky. John Harbaugh, he's going to go at a certain point. A team can't be the Vegas betting favorites going into the year to win the Super Bowl. Not the Eagles, not the Chiefs, not the Bills. The Baltimore Ravens were the Vegas betting favorites to win the Super Bowl. The offseason that they had, many people were coming into the year expecting this to be a top 5 offense, a top 5 defense. They were expecting Lamar Jackson to be an MVP candidate. And while Lamar's dealt with injuries, he's not, no blame here. Okay. Because he tapped out in that Patriots game. Back contusion. Come on. Mahomes is playing. Allen is playing. Hurts is playing. Stafford is playing. The top QBs in this league are playing through that injury with the season on the line. They don't run the ball with Derrick Henry. There needs to be a changing of the guard, and it will be John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh will be dismissed as the Ravens head coach this offseason, and we'll see if that's what they need. But change is coming in Baltimore for sure. We move into the Fringe Playoff tier. We got the Carolina Panthers, Tampa Bay Buccaneers to talk about. I'm going to talk about them together, man, because the NFC South, it's coming down to the wire. Carolina gets a big-time win at home over Tampa Bay this past week. And, the division's probably coming down to that Week 18 game. Carolina plays Seattle. Tampa Bay plays Miami this week. I expect Carolina to lose. I expect Tampa Bay to win. And then these will be 2 teams sitting at 8-8, going into a Week 18 game in Tampa Bay versus one another. For Carolina, if they win the division this year, they are ahead of schedule. Bryce Young and Dave Canales, year 2 together, would have resulted in an NFC South division title. Tedero McMillan, his rookie season, will be going off well. The defense vastly improved. J.C. Horn is one of the best corners in football. And even if they miss it, They were right there. Whereas on the flip side for Tampa, the expectation was that they were going to win the division this year. The expectation for Tampa was that this was going to be a Super Bowl caliber team this year. And right now, going into week 17, on the tier list, I have them in the Fringe Playoffs tier next to the Panthers. This would be an absolute failure for the Buccaneers if they were to miss the playoffs. To be honest, the fact that if they make the playoffs, they're probably going to get blown out in round one, that's already a failure as it is. This would be a complete embarrassment. Baker, in the second half of the year, has been pretty bad. Call a spade a spade. Todd Bowles, job on the line, potentially. All these weapons are back, man. Evans, Godwin, Igbuka, Otten, Bucky, Rashad White. You got to be able to figure it out. And I still put Detroit in this tier because I think Detroit is a better team than the teams in the Frisky tier. Detroit needs to win out, and they need Green Bay to lose out to make the playoffs, which isn't impossible, but I wouldn't call it likely. They need help from the Vikings and Ravens, and they need to take care of business themselves. Detroit's an interesting one. I don't see Dan Campbell being fired. I don't see Jared Goff being moved. The offense was actually really efficient this year and got even better when Dan Campbell took over. The defense has been pretty bad. Ultimately, to me, this falls on Brad Holmes, the general manager. The roster construction just isn't there. The defensive personnel isn't there. Now, obviously, Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch dealing with injuries really derailed the secondary, but they need to add some to that front seven. It can't just be just Aiden Hutchinson. And they do have to get back to the drawing board when it comes to their offensive playbook, because we did see a lot of their grit and attitude that we thought was coming from Dan Campbell. That was Ben Johnson. Dan Campbell can call good plays. Jared Goff could spread the ball around to Amon-Ra, J-Mo, Laporta when he's healthy, Gibbs, but that we're going to run right through you attitude, that was Ben Johnson. And it's possible Detroit's Super Bowl window is completely closed. We'll see what they do to prop it back open this offseason. Into the playoff teams tier, and I got the Pittsburgh Steelers starting off this tier. Pittsburgh, man, as sure as the sky is going to be blue, the grass is going to be green. Mike Tomlin's going to win 9 games and somehow be in the playoffs, man. And I don't think Pittsburgh has a real shot to go to a Super Bowl, so I'm not going to put them in the Super Bowl contenders tier. AFC is pretty wide open, but I don't know. I just can't buy into this Steelers team. They are getting better. The offense has improved. Aaron Rodgers using his mind, his IQ to spread the ball around. He still has arm strength to fit the ball in to some tight windows. DK Metcalf has suspended the last 2 games of the season, though, for that interaction with the Detroit fan. And if they don't win that Browns game, that Ravens game without him certainly becomes very interesting. But they get guys like Jonnu Smith involved, and Kenny Gainwell has a career year. And it's just kind of like Aaron said the other day, a bunch of outcasts just all on one team producing. The defense has gotten much better with Ramsey and Kyle Duggar at safety. TJ Watt, I don't know if they'll get him back this season. If they do, then I give them a puncher's chance in any one game, but I can't bet on them to go on a playoff level run right now. I kind of feel similar about Green Bay. And I know this might be hot takey to have Green Bay here. I think they're just getting too many injuries and too banged up at the wrong time. Micah Parsons out for the year, to me, really was a killer for them. They're now probably going to go into the playoffs as a 7 seed, having to win 3 straight road games to get to a Super Bowl without Micah, with some other injuries on that defense, with Josh Jacobs banged up for the last month, with Jordan Love and Malik Willis hurt now, with Christian Watson, who's been banged up. Jaden Reed's missed some time this year. It feels like the Packers are just too injured at this point in time to go on a Super Bowl run. I do think in any given playoff game, they're eligible to win, but I just don't see them progressing through 3 rounds of the playoffs right now at their current status. I think that they really did need Micah to do that, because there's some strong offensive teams that defense would have disrupted And Jeff Halfley's got a good defense. Don't get me wrong. I think it will now disrupt teams, but that concerns me. And I put Chicago in this tier as well. I'm starting to not, I believe in the long-term plan of Chicago, but they have been using voodoo magic to win games for far too long. And when it comes time for the playoffs and looking at some of the competition that they're going to be able to face, maybe the magician can pull a rabbit out of his hat at the end of the fourth quarter of one of these games, maybe even two, and Chicago makes a conference championship. But I don't see the ability for this team to comb through the NFC with some really strong teams playing at the level that they're at. The inconsistency of 4 quarters of strong play concerns me too much with Chicago. Love their future. I think Caleb is going to be discussed next year as soon as an MVP candidate. We'll see if Rome Odunze and Luther Burden are back, but that offensive weaponry, they're going to be really high-end talent next year. You're bringing some other defensive players. The defense isn't consistently great, and I think the Bears could be a really high-level team next year, but in this strong NFC, I don't see it right now. We move to kind of a loaded Super Bowl contenders tier, starting in the AFC, the Denver Broncos. Broncos defense has been struggling a little bit as of late. They haven't been a top 2 unit in football over the last month. Now, obviously, they have talent. They get to the quarterback. They bring in pressure. But I felt like for this team to be viewed as a Super Bowl favorite, that defense had to be in no doubt definitive top 2, top 3 defensive conversations. And in the last month, they just haven't been that. We saw it versus Green Bay. Green Bay was able to get some explosive plays against them. We saw it against Jacksonville. Jacksonville was able to move the ball pretty comfortably against them. Bo Nix made enough plays to beat Green Bay, did not make enough to beat Jacksonville. I think Bo Nix is a solid quarterback, but I don't know if I would call him a game-changing talent, more of a high-end offensive distributor who is mobile. The run game without J.K. Dobbins hasn't been quite to the level that I wanted it to be, but if we're being honest here, they're still probably going to be the 1 seed. They'll have a bye week. All their playoff games are run through Denver, Mile High in December, not an easy place to play. They did just win 11 games in a row, so I'm not going to kill them so much for losing 1 game. I already had them in this tier, but those are some of my concerns for Denver, but ultimately they're in this tier because with their pathway, with their coaching staff, with the talent on their defense, and with the fact that I do believe in Bo Nix's ability to run an offense, I think they could feasibly get to the Super Bowl this year. The Chargers. I haven't had the Chargers in this tier for a month, and I don't know if I'm going to regret doing it, but every week I watch this team play, and they've been playing good teams, and they keep winning. Over the last month, I can't believe that they haven't lost some of these games. And sometimes football is, you got to go into the analytics. You got to dive deep. You got to, figure out who's what and what these numbers mean. And sometimes football is simple. They got a top 10 quarterback in Justin Herbert? Check. They got a top 10 head coach in Jim Harbaugh? Check. They got a top 10 defense? Check. All right, they're a Super Bowl contender, and that's where I'm at with this team. Just kind of tapping out and giving into the Chargers at this point in time. Like, yeah, I guess they could go on a run. It's tough for me to believe with that offensive line against some of the stronger pass rushes that they're going to do it consistently, but they have been doing it consistently. So I got to give them credit for where they're at. These next 2 weeks against Houston and Denver are going to be real telltale signs for me. I think we're really going to know who the Chargers are these last 2 weeks by how they handle those pass rushes. And speaking of Houston and their pass rush, I have them here. Houston's offense versus the Raiders was really bad. Maybe they were looking ahead to this Chargers game. I'm not going to knock them down yet because of just 1 bad game, but it is something to take note of. However, they have the best defense in the entire NFL right now. I don't think it's particularly close. Stingley, Lassiter, Petrie in that secondary, the front line of Will Anderson Jr., Danielle Hunter, the best pass rush duo in football. You have Al-Shaair. You got a lot of guys on that defense. D'Amico Ryans has them boys really embodying that swarm mentality. And with CJ, we have seen some really high highs. He has made some unbelievable throws. We've seen him win a playoff game every year the last 2 years. And he can be a Super Bowl level quarterback. The offense looked really bad this last week without Woody Marks, who he's their entire run game. So that could be something. I do obviously love Nico Collins. The offense, though, does give me some skepticism right now. I can't believe I'm saying it, but Duval, the Jags are in the Super Bowl contenders tier. Similar to the Chargers, I've been kind of holding off putting this team in here, but going into Denver in December, winning 34-20 in the midst of what is it, a 6+ game win streak, you got to respect what they're putting down. And Trevor Lawrence has been absolutely hooping over the last month. Liam Cohen has unlocked this offense, and he has more specifically unlocked Trevor Lawrence's full potential. We are starting to see the Trevor Lawrence that we saw at Clemson, same with Travis Etienne, and then weapons like Jacoby Myers, Parker Washington, Brian Thomas Jr., Brenton Strange really starting to show themselves. The Jags defense, I do think it's a little bit of fool's gold in terms of, you know, their main philosophy is get pressure and take the ball away. And if they're not doing those things, I think high-end, strong quarterbacks will be able to move the ball against their defense. I don't think that they're specifically, you know, I think that they're kind of a big play defense, if that makes sense. But it's been working. So we got to give the Jags credit here. San Francisco, I can't believe the Niners are Super Bowl contenders right now. I can't believe the Niners might be the 1 seed. If they end up not being the 1 seed, I probably will drop them, but they are alive for it. And if they could get a bye week and then host 2 playoff games with Kyle Shanahan's coaching, Robert Saleh's coaching, the offense efficiency that they're having with Purdy, McCaffrey, Kittle's having a phenomenal year. You know, you got guys like Jennings who have really stepped up on that offensive side, and a defense who, even without Bosa and Warner, those guys are hooping. You got to give respect to the Niners. I'm putting the Eagles in this Super Bowl contender tier. We've seen 2 good weeks in a row, and yeah, it's been the Raiders and the Commanders, but as somebody who really keeps a keen eye on the team, the play calling has been good for 2 weeks in a row. And for the Eagles, it's never been a question of the talent on the roster, just the utilization of it. And I feel like this team is actually starting to find some mojo offensively. Maybe that's just because that they're playing the scrubs of the league right now. Got a big game this week versus Buffalo that I think will be a true test of where the Eagles are at offensively. But in an NFL playoff field that's pretty wide open, I'm going to say you got to knock out the champs for me to not give them any shot. The Super Bowl favorites tier, man. I'm going to start with the Patriots. Drake May. Merry Bakemas, everybody. Drake May has been phenomenal this year. I'm actually just going to put the Bills up here too and kind of explain why I have these 2 AFC teams above the rest. And it really comes down to the quarterbacks that I trust. Drake May and Josh Allen. Justin Herbert, I do think if we did quarterback rankings today, I'd still have him over Drake May, but I trust Drake May's situation a little bit more, and that gives them the edge, especially because I think that their offense is a little bit more dynamic right now. The Patriots offensively with Travion Henderson, Ramondre Stevenson, big game, Stephon Diggs, clearly he's just saving what he's got for these big games. Hunter Henry, Kyle Williams has come in and been pretty solid, Kayshon Boutte, but what Drake May did versus Baltimore, that 11-point comeback, 380 passing yard game, you have to show some real respect to the Patriots. Their defense is a solid group of guys, man. Milton Williams will be back. Christian Gonzalez is a top-tier corner in football, and a lot of their playoff games will be home playoff games too. You're going to be bringing, you know, a Jacksonville, a Houston, an LA to a cold Foxborough. That's an advantage for them. For Buffalo, I know that they're coming off of a close game versus the Browns, but here's what I know. Going into the AFC playoffs, they have the best quarterback in the playoffs, no doubt about it, in Josh Allen. They also have the most experienced team in the playoffs with their team as an entirety. The next closest team in terms of experience is probably the Houston Texans, and they've never made a conference championship. So Buffalo has a lot of experience, has the better quarterback. Their defense, it's been hit or miss, but I feel like with McDermott, with some of these veteran players, you know, your Rousseau, your Bosa, your Benford, your Milano, your Ed Oliver, these are guys that are going to be playoff risers. And if not this year for Buffalo, when? When will the AFC ever be as wide open? Because Mahomes and Lamar are probably coming back with a vengeance. These young teams are only going to get better. This is Buffalo's best shot, and I think that they know it, and that's why I got them in this favorites tier. And as well, in cold weather football, they can run the ball. James Cook's going to lead the NFL in rushing yards this year. You got to put some respect on that rushing attack. And then in the NFC, I have LA, I have Seattle. These two just played on Thursday Night Football, 38-37 in overtime, so I think it's fair to say that they're pretty evenly matched. The Rams with Devontae Adams, I do think, are a better team than Seattle. To me, the Rams are still the best team in football. Stafford's the MVP. Puka, Devontae, Kyron, Blake Corum, kind of like a four-headed weapon monster on that offense with McVay calling the plays. The defense is strong. It gets a pass rush. You have some questions about the coverage in the secondary, but no team is perfect. And Seattle, Sam Darnold maybe exercises the demons. Their defense is legit. Ken Walker, he's looking explosive right now. JSN's going to lead the league in receiving yards. And, you know, that's probably going to be a divisional round playoff game if the current bracket holds. But to me, those are probably the two best teams in the NFC, man. And I feel like I haven't had much movement there in a long, long time. This is my tier list as we head into week 17. As always, be sure to give me your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you like this video or you just love the NFL, why not hit that subscribe button? We're putting out tons of great NFL content for you on the channel. I will catch you next time. Peace.